Tonight on Antenna, does remembering help victims of disaster?
When I first met my husband, he was quite calm, and I didn't realize that things were going to turn so bad later on. And he became much more nervous as time went on. He finds it very hard to sleep. Sometimes he wakes up from a nightmare, and he doesn't seem to realize that I'm there. I talk to him, he doesn't answer, and he screams. Sometimes he hits out.
You never hear him talk about it. He's just like everybody else, a good father, a good husband. I mean, I'm his son and we're pretty close, but I can't remember when I heard it mentioned last time.
This is a story of two men. Two men who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Second World War, the Jewish Holocaust. No man should ever be asked to go through what they went through. It just about broke this man. By contrast, this survivor is as normal as you and me, except that we have discovered that he is different from us in one strange respect. The question I want to ask is, do these two Holocaust survivors, especially this one, have any message that could help the survivors of today's disasters? These two Holocaust survivors received no psychiatric treatment whatever. You didn't in those days. But whereas this man never learned to cope, this one has learned to cope marvelously. But it's the way in which he has learned to cope that startles me. I'm Perchance, professor of behavioral biology here at the Faculty of Medicine in the Israel Institute of Technology in Haifa. We have found many of these well-adjusted survivors of the Holocaust, and all of them have this strange difference from you and me. And that suggests a completely different form of psychiatric treatment to the one advocated by Freud.
It's not just different, it's diametrically opposite. According to people like Freud and his followers, trauma victims should be encouraged to speak as much as possible about their experiences. I'm Surgeon Commander Morgan O'Connell, and I'm a psychiatrist in the Royal Navy. We use the Freudian approach in treating traumatized servicemen, people whose painful experiences in active service have disturbed them mentally. I've come to Israel to see what Professor Levy is up to.
I understand that your type of treatment is Freudian in nature.
In fact, our treatment is probably better described as controlled exposure.
What actually are you doing?
Well, we believe that our patients are avoiding uncomfortable issues, and so we set out to get them to confront those and use such things as videotapes, personal accounts of the actual incident itself for each individual patient, and more particularly get them to produce collages about the life-threatening event and then describe that to their colleagues.
I have that this type of treatment often produces rebellion. Is it common?
Yes, indeed, and it's quite understandable when you think of what we're doing with the patients, stirring up painful memories.
What is your success rate?
Well, of course, it depends on what you mean by success. The criterion we use is returning somebody to duty. And, of course, it depends on how long you follow them up for. But at the moment, we are sending more people back to duty than, in fact, are leaving the service. So in that sense, we are successful.
But you don't cure it?
No, we don't cure, nor do we cure 100%. And one of the reasons I jumped at the opportunity to come out and visit you was to explore yet another possible avenue of therapy.
So you accept there is a room for a different approach?
Oh, definitely. Yes, most definitely.
You know, treating people and consulting, everybody thinks you can do better than any trained psychiatrist. And I must admit, I'm not a psychiatrist, far away. Here in Haifa, at the Technion's Faculty of Medicine, I run a sleep laboratory where we run major projects on the diagnosis and treatment of sleep disorders. After the common cold, sleep disorders are our most prevalent complaint. This is a typical bedroom that we use for sleep recording. The patient lie here, and if it's a child, and then we need a mother or a father, we have another bed. You see, we have an infrared camera with a lamp, so we can see him in total darkness, and he's wired with electrodes.
What do the electrodes record?
We record EEG, we record eye movements, muscle potentials, we record breathing, we record leg movements, and even oxygen saturation. For example, if you'd like to record eye movements, you tape the electrode very close to the eye, and this record eye movements.
Yes.
Then the electrodes are running through the box up to the polygraph, which is in the next room. And this is the polygraph, and the electrodes that you saw in the bedroom come through this board and through the polygraph, and they are connected to these pens that you see here. And each of these pens tells a different story during the night. And in fact, this is one record, one patient taken from...
And what do you use all this information for?
We see 130 patients a month, over 7,000 patients since the laboratory was open.
7,000. That's just like a sleep factory. As far as I know, there's nothing like this in Britain.
No, and I believe that Freud would give his back teeth to have one of these. In Israel, we follow Freud in one respect. We keep the memory of the Holocaust very much alive. Just outside Haifa, there is a huge memorial dedicated to the 6 million Jews who were slaughtered by the Nazis. The pictures inside really bring home to you the terrible conditions they went through.
I don't come to this place very often. It doesn't do to dwell on the horrors of the past. But don't ever think that I've forgotten what happened. I couldn't, even if I wanted to. Places like this are meant as a warning to our children, to the generations to come, about the horrors that man could and did do unto man. They are a memorial to dear ones who perished in Auschwitz and the other concentration camps. They are not meant as a place for people like me who lived through it all to come and refresh our memories. Some things are far better left alone.
One of my doctoral students, Hannah Kaminer, used both these men in a study involving 23 Holocaust survivors. We began by subjecting the survivors to a battery of clinical interviews and psychiatric tests. As a result of these tests, the survivors were divided into two groups according to their adjustment to daily life and their style of coping more than 40 years after the Holocaust. A person was judged to be well adjusted if he or she had not suffered medical problems, undue problems at work, had no major physical or mental complaints, and expressed a general satisfaction with daily life. All 32 subjects spent 4 nights at the sleep laboratory. Using polysomnographic recordings, their brain activities, breathing levels, leg movements, and rapid eye movements were constantly registered. It is a good bet that if a sleeper is in rapid eye movement sleep, in a REM sleep, then he is dreaming. Wake the normal person up during REM sleep, and they'll remember dreaming 8 or 9 out of 10 times. The group we were interested in was the non-copers, the poorly adjusted. Sleep obviously was disturbed, a lot of REM sleep. It was at this point that we woke the sleepers up and asked them to describe their dreams. Look, rapid eye movements. He is dreaming now. Hannah, can you wake him up?
Dov, what did you dream about? What was going on in your mind?
מה קרה? איזה חלום, איזה חלום, איזה חלום, היה זה נורא. אוף.
אתה יכול לספר לי על מה חלמת? Can you tell me what was going?
כן, חלמתי שהגעתי לבירקנאו.
What a dream.
זה מחנה השמדה.
I dreamed that I was on a train to the camp to Birkenau, crowded with people. And we came to the end of the line, we came to a platform. And even before we got off the train, the Germans were yelling at us, the guards, and they were waving sticks and beating us. And I could hear the dogs barking. And then the capo came, the internal police, the police from the inmates, and they were beating us as well. And the dogs were biting us. And they divided us into two groups, to the right and to the left. And people thought that the ones on the right would die. They thought that the ones on the left would die, and they didn't know which side to go to. They were running back and forth from side to side.
On average, the poorly adjusted remembered rather fewer dreams, about 61%. And the dreams were found to have a high level of death anxiety and self-oriented hostility. Again, not very surprising. What surprised us was the striking difference in how many dreams the well-adjusted group remembered. Of course, this is the well-adjusted, and he is sleeping pretty well. But look, here are the rapid eye movements. He is dreaming now. Hannah, can you wake him up?
Kalman, did you dream anything? Did you remember what was going on in your mind?
No, I didn't dream. Didn't have any dream. Nothing I can remember. Just slept well. Didn't dream at all.
You didn't dream at all?
No.
Don't remember anything?
No.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you.
This was the real surprise. The well-adjusted survivors recalled less than a third of the dreams, 30%. And most of them didn't recall dreaming at all. They denied dreaming. This was the real surprise.
And what is your interpretation of these findings?
We believe that these patients suppress their dreaming in order not to risk any memory from the Holocaust penetrating their dreams. They use the same approach in waking as well. Some of these patients never spoke about experiences in the Holocaust. It is as extreme that some of their close family members, sons, wife even, didn't hear anything about the history of these survivors. And we believe that suppressing the memories in waking and sleep actually helped them to cope. The only difference is that during sleep it's just unconscious.
And are you suggesting, therefore, that we should be applying this principle to our patients? And perhaps the follow-on question to that would be, is every patient likely to be able to do this sort of suppression?
Yeah, in fact, what I'm suggesting, which is completely opposite to what is done in the controlled exposure, that some of the patients, and I'm not so sure if all of the patients, should be helped to voluntarily forget, just to seal off the memories. And by doing that, I'm sure that some of the chronically patients who suffer for years from traumatic experiences can be helped to adjust to normal life.
Professor Levy's suggestion stands conventional practice on its head, but it would certainly be a very natural form of therapy. Left to ourselves, we do tend to forget bad things anyway. Whether you can teach people to forget, that needs investigation. But first things first. Good scientific practice demands that someone else must now repeat those surprising results, and preferably not using Holocaust survivors. There's always that nagging chance that Hannah's research was on a very unusual group. People selected by the very fact that they came through those uniquely appalling conditions and lived to tell the tale.
One of the blocks, there was an elderly gentleman, a walking skeleton. We became friends, and I came around and brought him food and so on. In a very short time, the situation evolved where he was utterly miserable if I didn't show up at the end of my working day. Never mind whether I had some scrap of food or not. All he wanted is that I show up, shake hands, sit a little bit next with him, and then go my way. And I remember he promised me that, don't worry, Kalman, we will emerge from this one. I will see to your education. Of course he didn't. I emerged, he didn't. The man who has this inner ability is ipso facto a light tower in the misery and the darkness around him. Whether he understands it or not, I didn't. I was a 14-year-old boy.
So it seems to me what you're saying is that you teach people by example.
Without noticing it. That you tell them, what's your problem? Ah, they stole my bread. Terrible. But here, I have some, let's share it, and so on.
So what is it you're teaching them? I mean, what?
Not to give up.
Not to give up.
Not to give up, and not to see everything as the end of the world.